Okay, it is 10:09 a.m. and I had one trade with SYXX, and if I don't trade anything else, I'm probably gonna have, I don't know, maybe a $7 red day. It wasn't a setup that worked out, but SYXX was a pretty interesting OTC. I added it yesterday because it had a nice green day, and this one I really hesitated and I didn't take the trade, but this one actually worked out really nicely. And I was kind of iffy about it because, I don't like the daily chart. It looks like something that just keeps trapping a bunch of people into, a downtrending mess. This is the kind of setup that is, if you ask me, engineered to make the most money out of people who are trying to dip buy and they just keep losing their money. But for this right here, this looks pretty nice in that it looks like it was going to be a potential second day. It had a big spike right here, and then it sold off and they got under VWAP. But then I like how we had this little wick right here, and at the time this was the most amount of volume sold. So I really liked it when it did that downtrend. It had all of this volume here, so maybe it wiped out a bunch of sellers. And then it started the uptrend a little bit, and there was a person holding the bid with a lot of size as well. And the goal would have been for it to have broken here VWAP at 15. I never took the trade, but I was super interested in seeing how it was going to potentially do it, if it was going to work or not. And this one really worked out, and I think in the future I might consider a trade like this in the future. And I think I had a trend line from maybe, it's kind of hard to do it now because the chart has been moving around, but I think I had a trend line something like this. And I figured, well, in theory, if I'm in at 15, and this thing made a super nice move, as you can see, this was like a 50% move. I will probably sell if it breaks the trend line. And this one never really broke the trend line. It just kept uptrending, but I had like a mental sell in the 19s because I thought it was pretty excessive and it did get higher to the 21. So I do kind of regret missing it, but it was a great learning experience. Let's see if it's actually going to break 18 this time. This has been something that I've been looking at on the setup that I actually took. But when it had a drop and it started holding here, I thought, maybe this could be a setup where it has that drop, it holds itself, and then it continues an uptrend. But I didn't feel good about this one, and I can't draw the trend line anymore. But the way I had it, the trend line just broke it right here, and it seems like maybe it broke the trend line that I had for that initial idea here. So maybe it might downtrend more, which it did. And when it downtrended more, I did have an interest, and I eventually took a trade with SYXX, and this one did not work out, but I think I could have sold better and made a lot. Not made a lot, but I would have lost less. Why did I take the trade that I took right here? I was in at 955 at 178, which was right here at 178. The idea was is that, it had this crazy move. It started the downtrend, and if I can draw it, it broke like a downtrending trend line, which I believe I drew. I forgot which one of these it was. Let's just say this one. It broke the downtrending trend line, right? Nice run up, broke the downtrending trend line right here. I'm in at 955, right under VWAP. Best case scenario, it breaks the 18 level, which is VWAP, and then it continues the uptrend. It looks like it's doing it now, but that is really ugly price action the way it did it. As you can see, this jumbly mess. It reminds me a lot of KG, which actually has not been too bad. It's been uptrending over the past few days. It's downtrending now, but I never had an interest in trading KG anymore because of how sketchy the price action was, especially when it had that big red day. But it looks like it's doing it now. That's pretty, it feels good now that, it looks like it's working, although I was in way too early. I thought it was going to downtrend, break the trend line right here, and then it was going to make a move towards VWAP and do it right here. But in fact, it took much longer and it downtrended a lot more before it looks like it's starting to make a move now, which is, at least it's doing it. So I guess I was on the right track, just way too early. But I did have a $15 risk level, and I thought that worst case scenario, it's going to break the 17 level, which is a level it's trying to hold off of, so it didn't just drop under VWAP, but it was also holding around 17. And worst case, I'm out at 15.5 because this thing is very wide in how it's, trades. It's very, very excessive. So I had that in mind, and again, I was in right here. I did sell eventually at 9.59. There was just a lot of selling price action at 18. Too many people were dumping their shares at 18, and I kind of got wrecked right here. I think I could have done better because I eventually cut it in this candle right here, and I got out on 164, the very bottom right here of this red candle, because of the fact that it broke 17, but it didn't just gradually downtrend and break 17. What happened was is that somebody had a whole bunch of shares, as you can see, 3 million something shares, just dumped it, and it just started downtrending very quickly. And usually when it comes to stuff like that, it usually turns around once that big selling is out of its way. And maybe I could have waited and then I would have been able to have sold still for a loss because it did still break my risk level, so I'm going to get out of the trade. But maybe I could have sold for a better price and I wouldn't have lost as much. And then, it tried again to do the thing at 18, and it broke even further and went to the 15s. So I guess I was pretty fine with my wide risk of worst case scenario getting out at 15.5. And then eventually you can see how ugly the price action is, how wide it is, but it did actually make a move past 18. And there is a big bidder at 18A, and maybe this thing can continue the uptrend some more. Doesn't have to, especially if somebody keeps dumping that amount of shares. But yeah, somebody tried to take out 18A. That's pretty cool. It still got above 18, and wow, it did it. Pretty cool. A lot of learning, despite the fact that I lost a bit here, which sucks. It was a great learning lesson, and there isn't really anything else that I'm interested in. ENZC, maybe if it breaks 94, it wouldn't be so bad. There's going to be resistance at pretty much 99, but it looks like it's not going to be able to do it, at least right now. That's really about it. Just pretty impressive with SYSX. Very ugly price action, but this offered a really nice move in the beginning. And I'll see if there's any other setups, but for right now, that's all I have. It is 12:02 p.m. and I want to go over two setups. I didn't trade any of them, but KG is one and the other one is OZSC. This one kind of worked. It honestly didn't really work that nicely. It would be nice when perhaps later there is more activity in the OTC markets and there's more trading back and forth, but I did have the interest a little bit in KG because it looked like maybe the head of an inverse head and shoulder, and then maybe the head playing off of this support level, and then it makes a uptrend, but it might just continue to downtrend for all I know. But I did have an interest in it, and I never again bought it, but I did have an interest around this 155 level. And the thing that threw me off is that this one started the uptrend, but it was only from people buying it. There was never really any selling price action, and it wasn't until it got to the 158s that it had selling price action. And every single level up was like a big 100K seller, which wasn't ideal looking. And it looks like it actually downtrended and went as low as a 14.8 level. And I thought maybe in theory I could be in at 155, and worst case scenario I cut it if it breaks a level. Absolute worst case scenario I'm at 14.5, and that would have been the case with that, but I never traded it. And then the other one, OZSC, this one kind of worked out. I did see it here, but it was just downtrending, and there were too many sellers at the ask. But at some point, it started to turn around and head the other way. And the goal of breaking VWAP at 232 eventually happened right here, and it looked like somebody bought a whole bunch of shares and brought it up to the 25s, and it has sold off since. So not really anything nice in terms of that. ENZC perhaps could be more ideal for a setup like that, but I don't like that seller there at 92, even though it's kind of far away. I will keep looking, but I don't see anything that I'm really interested in. DWAC almost looks like an inverse head and shoulders here, shoulder, head, and then the shoulder. Maybe you're in at 5103, and I mean, it got a little bit higher, but the goal will be for it to get to VWAP, but it might not get to VWAP. And this one keeps uptrending, which is cool, but I don't like stocks that trade with a spread. It's always too disgusting for me to consider it. It's always jumpy and very wishy-washy. Ideally, it was less of that. And I think something that I'm learning now with this setup that I take when it gets under VWAP is that maybe I'm getting a little too early Because if you can see my entry at SYX, I was in at 955. It did in theory play out even with this ugly spread, as you can see down here. It did work out and it broke VWAP at 18, and then it got to 20, and then it kind of came back to the 18 almost like a confirmation, and then it started the uptrend ever since. But yeah, I wish this thing traded not so ugly. But if you look at my trade that I had with DWAC, it's a very similar thing that I went through where it had a downtrend under VWAP, and then it made a run towards the highs, and then it came back. And I took this little cheeky buy right here under VWAP, but as you can see, it took much longer before it ultimately turned around. And that seems very similar to what I went through here with SYSX. So I think when it comes to dips under VWAP, I think I'm getting in too early, so I'm going to try to be more patient and let them maybe play out more and perhaps only consider the setup when it looks like it's trying to turn around and not while I feel like, oh, it's going to be the bottom here, but then it doesn't end up being the case and it keeps downtrending. I think that can help me be a lot more profitable trading this type of setup. And yeah, I'll make an update later. Pretty cool uptrend, but I really don't like the way the stock trades. Okay, it is 10:15 p.m. and I am here to call it off. Overall, I am down $7 trading SYSX, and that was way back in the beginning right here. This was a very nice high day breakout. This was a nice, like, it's almost like a morning panic bounce play, as I mentioned before, but it offered a super nice move. And unfortunately, when I got into this, it was trading somewhat normally. I mean, kind of crazy, but when it got to this point, I had to cut the trade and it started trading with a really nasty spread. Maybe some person just had a whole bunch of volume that they had to dump. And, you know, as crappy as it feels to be down $7 on a stock that had a tremendous move, almost 3x, if not definitely 3x from the original 15 level. At least I wasn't a guy who dumped like, at least I wasn't a guy who dumped like, I don't know, 4 million shares at least before it did that crazy move towards the upside. But I really just lost interest with this stock because of the fact that it trades really ugly and it reminds me of KGKG. Maybe this thing is going to be like KGKG and offer a really, you know, big red day like it did, and maybe it can be a actual morning panic bounce play perhaps, or I guess just a short setup, who knows. But I will look forward to seeing SYSX and to see what it can do over a longer period of time if it can continue the uptrend for more than just 2 days. But you know, it was a very nice, in theory, high day breakout, but you can see when it started to do it, the volume dried up and then it catches itself. So I'm going to have to adjust to this type of price action and just continue to get better. And at least I tried, you know, in my setup that did ultimately play out, but I was too early and I need to learn to potentially maybe be a little more patient and again, perhaps wait for it to start going the other direction before I consider a trade, and then to try to nail the bottom with something like this. And that's really about it. It was pretty nice otherwise, and nothing really with the other OTCs. I'm thankful that at least there was a setup with SYSX because there wasn't really any nice OTC setups. But I think that's where I'm going to call it off. And I think next week I'm going to stick to a $15 risk level until I see myself trading that $15 risk level very closely. And yeah, that's really about it. A great learning lesson, and hopefully in the future, if I can get another setup like this, I can be able to profit from it and really benefit from it.